Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 International Symposium on Tugging Rituals and for Sustainability, Living with Ice Age. My name is Yongho, Assistant Program Specialist at the International Information and Networking Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage in the Asia-Pacific region under the auspices of UNESCO, ICCAP. Within the framework of the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding Intangible Cultural Heritage, ICCAP operates the Information and Networking Project to support the UNESCO strategic plan with the 48 member states in the Asia-Pacific regions. ICCAP is organizing the symposium from yesterday. Actually, the day before yesterday, we live streamed the rituals of the KGC Tug of War. Now, I would like to move on to the second session, which is the theme is Convergence and Sustainability of Culture. Director Kwan-ho Lee from the National Folk Museum of Korea will facilitate the session. Without further delay, I will hand over the microphone to the director. The floor is yours.
네, 방금 소개받은 국립미술박물관 이관호입니다.
Hello everyone, I am Lee
오늘
Kwon-ho,
우리나라
as
최고의
introduced
축제
from the National
전문가들을
Folk Museum
모시고
of Korea.
세계 인류
We're here with the
무형문화유산
experts of
줄다리기의
festivals from around the world
충남 당진
to
기지시
engage in
줄다리기
discussions, and we're
박물관에서
particularly here
두
at the
번째
Tanjin
섹션에
City
모더레이터를
at
맡게
the
되어 매우
KGC
기쁘게
줄다리기
생각합니다.
Museum, and it's a great pleasure to be the moderator of this excellent
이번
session.
국제술대의 주제는
The topic
2021년
of this
지속
symposium
가능 발전을 위한 아시아
is
전통
Tugging
줄다리기라는
Rituals and
내용으로
Games for
진행되고
its
있는데요.
sustainability.
그 중에서도 두 번째 섹션의 세부
And
주제는
particularly the
지속
second
가능한
session will
발전을
be
위한
on looking
무형유산
into
활용 관련 사례
convergence and
발표로
sustainability
이번
of
섹션에서는
culture.
4명의
We
발표자께서
have 4
발표를
presenters for session
해주시겠습니다.
2.
이번 섹션의 발표와 토론 시간은 총 80분으로
We have a total of 80 minutes for this session. Therefore, we do not have ample time. Therefore, I would like to ask the speakers to make sure to keep the time limit of 15 minutes for their presentation. And because we are doing this via Zoom, I would like to ask you to keep to the time limit. And we also have a discussion session. But in terms of discussion session, I will be posting some questions as moderator, and we will also be answering the questions that are posted on the chat box. Therefore, if you do have any comments or questions, please use the chat box on YouTube. And after the presentations, we'll make sure to have your questions answered. So then, let us now start the very first presentation of the session. The first presenter is Kim Junghwan from Korea Festival Culture Institute. Mr. Kim Junghwan, as you're all very well aware, is an expert on festivities and festivals around the world, as well as in Korea. He is particularly noted for his research on festivals, and he's putting in a lot of effort to facilitate festivity. He has great interest in 기지시 줄다리기, and today he'll be talking about the correlation between festivals and tugging rituals and games. A big round of applause, please.
반갑습니다. It is a pleasure to meet you. I've just been introduced. My name is Kim Junghwan. I see a representative from the Philippines, Gustaka. I don't know if they can hear me. So today I'm going to talk about the correlation between tugging rituals and games. But I'm going to begin by talking about the conclusion first, because I believe that the tug of war and we have to think about the scholarly or academic implications of tug of war to try to find correlations between tugging rituals and games and festivals. But in any case, I would like to talk about this topic. So we're going to talk about tug of war and the correlation between tug of war, tugging rituals and games, and festival. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be as speedy as possible. As you know, 4 countries, Korea, Cambodia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, work together at the 10th session of the Intergovernmental Committee of UNESCO, held in Namibia, Africa, from November 30th to December 4th in 2015. And with the favorable evaluation of the Intergovernmental Committee, we've had the multinational inscription, the 4 countries of tugging rituals and games. And this has led to very positive implications, not just in the 4 countries, but elsewhere as well. And many other communities are working for the sustainable development of tug-of-war. 6 of the rites in Korea were included in this multinational inscription, such as the 기지시, 영산 줄다리기, 삼척 줄다리기, 의리양 줄다리기, 남해성구 줄긋기, and 밀양감나게 줄당기기. And Vietnam, Cambodia, and the Philippines are also included in this, with the Philippines in Baraway, where the Ifgao community lives. They've worked together with us on this multinational inscription. So just briefly on where the tug-of-war began. So there isn't a lot of historical archives or academic texts that tell us where exactly the tug-of-war or the tugging games and rituals began. We just know that the communities have continued to preserve this tradition over time. If we were to look at historical archives, there's mention that it started in Egypt and Myanmar, elsewhere, many countries in Southeast Asia. And also because many countries in Asia have a farming tradition, this agricultural tradition, the tugging rituals and games, have been universally widespread in this region as well. Right now, even in Canada, some of the Eskimo communities also use a shorter rope to engage in tugging rituals and games there as well. So if we were to look specifically into the origin of tugging rituals and games, it is difficult for us to know exactly when and where it began, because so many communities around the world practice this ritual and game. But if we were to focus in Asia, we want to understand the types of forms and styles of tugging rituals and games during the Tang Dynasty in China. Is saying that the tug-of-war originated from battle between Wu and Chu in the period of spring and autumn. Some folklore approaches say that it was practiced as an agricultural ritual for good harvest since before that. And if you look on the bottom, you'll see a small picture there. This is what we see in the Book of Sui and the Book of Tang. And then if we move on to some of the cases in Korea, where tugging rituals and games started in Korea, if we look at the Dongguk Yeojiseungnam, which was published in the 15th century in Joseon Dynasty, this is where the first records of tugging rituals and games first appeared. And it says that tugging rituals and games started in 6th century in China, so we assume that tugging rituals and games in Korea also began around that time. So I talked about the origin of 줄다리기 thus far. This 줄다리기, or tug-of-war, became seen as more of a sport element and as a form of competition. And in Greece, before BC 500, even before then, there's mention of tug-of-war use. And in AD 1000, Scandinavian people and German champions competed with each other using tug-of-war. And in China, as I mentioned before, China, Mongolia, Turkey, these countries see tug-of-war. We see tug-of-war mentions in France, and also with the Paris Olympic in 1920 with the Belgium Antwerp Olympics, tug-of-war was actually a competitive category that was played in the Olympic Games. So if we take a look at this from an ethnological or folkloric approach, there is so many specific characteristics of tugging rituals and games. And one of which is that it has the form of a ritual. And within this ritual, it has the symbolism of origin, ritual, and rite, and it fosters a participation of community. So it has that collectivity But in the third, it also has the characteristic of deviance. It's non-routine. And fourthly, there's the spirit of competitiveness. There's a contest, competition, and it's very spontaneous. Spontaneous, meaning that people voluntarily participate. The community voluntarily participates in these games. So this is the approach that many folklore researchers take. And also, many of these tugging rituals and games became seen from the point of view of festivals, which is slightly different from folkloric approaches. Because if we take a look at many of the festival programs we see around us, and when tugging rituals and games are included in these festivals, many people tend to see them as a kind of content, as a main leading content of that particular festival. So this traditional folkloric ritual of tug of war, and then this aspect of tug of war as a game and tug of war as a competitive sport, there might be a little bit different, but all of them have similar characteristics that tie them in as a prototypical tug of war. With festivals, as you know, festivals began with the origin of human history. In ancient Greece, they had festivals there with the Dionysus festivals and with the festival of the sun that is still practiced to this day in Peru. Many of these festivals started in the land. The reason is because many of these societies that were agricultural in nature, they prayed for a good harvest, and later they would thank the gods for a good harvest. So this was the primary origin of many of these festivals. So we see in these festivals that people pray to the gods, and they left their faith to the gods, and the festivals celebrated a sort of beginning, a new beginning for those societies. With these festivals, if we take a look at their different attributes, they have a ritual feature, playfulness, sense of community, participation, deviance. These fundamental functions of festivals are all there. From the ancient times and all the way to the modern times, the festivals were all very much religious in nature. The religious rites and rituals have been very much emphasized. But if we look at the contemporary festivals have moved away from religious behavior, and they've given a new sort of purpose to the festivals, and that is the kind of festivals that we see in the present day. If we look at the prototypicality of these festivals, meaning the prototype of festivals, in the past, these prototypical festivals did not serve a particular purpose. They were the end in and of themselves. It's not that people tried to do something through festivals, but that the festival was the end result. The festival provided a sort of belonging to the community. They gave community unity, participation, and they felt a sense of stability and security. And they felt that it was a rite of passage, and it gave them a sense of a social community. That is the prototype of festivals. But then festivals have later come to be seen as a sort of game, as a sort of play. So that is a difference. In the festivals, we have that aspect of play, of fun, which is, I think you very well know, which is found in the book Homo Ludens, which is written by the Dutch historian Johan Huizinga, where he talks about the human that thinks, the thinking human, where he says that play is not an element of culture, that culture itself has a characteristic as play. And the French sociologist Roger Caillot also wrote in his book, Le Jeu et l'Homme, that humans could not play alone. Human play is a social phenomenon, so there is always the participation of a group. There needs to be groups that engage in play. And there is no cultural practice to make people equal as much as a play or a game could. So with these plays, there are two types of play, so two standards that govern all forms of play, such as rules and will. And then Roger Caillot continued to divide into four play forms: agon, mimicry, ilinx, and alea. Agon here symbolizes competition. So this aspect of agon, or the spirit of competition, this is something that we see very clearly in tug of war. one of the most important elements of tug-of-war, and that leads us to believe that tug-of-war is a kind of play through the spirit of competition. It's a kind of a competitive play, if we were to follow Roger Carlo's definition. Moving on to the third chapter, the relationship between festivals and tugging games. With tug-of-war, large members of the community participate in tug-of-war. So it's a collective play originating from rituals and had a competitive, festive characteristic that the community took part in. So it refers to a sort of regularly practiced tug-of-war where many villagers, many members of the community would come together to perform. And this in and of itself is a festival in the prototypical sense. This is the key argument that I want to talk about through my presentation, that festivals and tugging games are not separate from each other, that tugging games are a festival, and a festival can be seen as a tug-of-war. However, in Korea, many people say that this is a seasonal sort of custom, not a festival, that this is something that people just practice on a seasonal basis. And I don't think that perspective is correctly accurate. There are many kinds of festivals, and there are prototypical festivals. There are meaning and purposes behind the festivals, and we take them all comprehensively. They tell us that festivals and tug-of-war are one and the same. So it matters whether we're going to see festivals and tug-of-war from an ethnological point of view, or a folklorist point of view, or from the point of view of community uniformity, or from the point of view of tourism. But whatever the case, festivals and tug-of-war, when we look at the correlation between the two, is that both of them exist in the same context. People perform and engage in festivals the same way that they do with tug-of-war. So tug-of-war and festival are one and the same. Tug-of-wars have the same elements that we see with festivals. Of course, depending on the geography, depending on the country, the form and practice could be a little bit different. But the way that tug-of-wars are performed in practice are the same way, the same characteristics that we find with festivals, because these are elements that live and breathe within the community. So with tug-of-wars, you know that the community all comes together, they put in their strength and focus and engage together. And if we go back to the agricultural societies, many people engage in tug-of-war as a way to pray to the gods. So this also, tug-of-war contributed to strengthening the bonds between the community members while also praying for good harvest and a plentiful catch. So with that, I would like to briefly conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for paying attention. Thank you very much. That was, I think, your original presentation lasted for 8 pages or so, but you really worked very hard to keep within the 15-minute time limit. So thank you very much for that excellent presentation. I need to ask you for your understanding, and that as a moderator, I would like to briefly summarize the presentation and comment on it before I move on to the next presentation. In fact, that was what I would usually do in my capacity as moderator, but because we are joining here in a virtual online format, I'm going to skip over the summaries and just go straight to the second presentation. The second presenter is Haydee Hermosora from the Philippines, Hongduan City. She is in charge of the tourism office at Hongduan. She's going to tell us about the line between safeguarding heritage and tourism in the Philippines. Because she is working in the field and she's a tourism officer working in the field, I think this would be very beneficial. As I work in the National Folk Museum of Korea, I would also like to hear very much what she has to say. We would like to hear from you now.
Good afternoon. A pleasant afternoon to each and everyone. I'm Haydee Hermosora, and I am from the local government unit of Hongduan, Ifugao, province of Ifugao, Cordillera Administrative Region. And I'll be discussing regarding our very own punuk as our subject is the line between safeguarding intangible cultural heritage and tourism. Next, please. So let me welcome you to the Municipality of Hongduan. So Municipality of Hongduan is one of the 11 municipalities of Ifugao. It is bounded on the east by Kiangan, on the west by Mountain Province, on the south by the Municipality of Tinok, and on the north by Banawe. Next, please. As shown in the picture, as you can see, Hongduan is very mountainous place, and it is dissected by rivers, streams, and creeks, and the slope is actually above 50% with an elevation of a minimum of 700 meters to 2,700 meters above sea level. And we experience only two types of season, the wet and the dry season. The dry season starts from the month of December until May, and the wet season starts from June to November. Next, please. The total area of the local government unit of Hongduan is only 28,714 square hectares, and mostly open forest and closed forest. Next, please. We only have a total population of 9,400 as per Philippine Statistics Authority record, and the municipality is composed of only 9 barangays. The people of Hongduan only belongs to the Tuali tribe, and however, there are people speaking the Kalanguya because they are very near the municipality of Tinok who speaks the same. Next, please. So basically, Hongduan is an agricultural area, and the primary source of livelihood is on agricultural activities. The municipality also have other economic activities to include commerce and trade, industry, and tourism. Next, please. Commerce and trade, we only have minimal and micro industry, and we rely on tourism as part of our income generating activities in the municipality. So the local government unit of Hongduan is a home where nature and culture coexist. And aside from its abundant flora and fauna, the breathtaking view of the Hongduan rice terraces, clusters, and the preserved forest ranges are the ever humble and accommodating Hongduans, whose culture and traditions remain intact and are still being practiced in the present generation. With this incomparable relationship of human and nature, Hongduan is envisioned to be a living heritage destination that fosters caring relationship with tourists from around the world and thrives on and nurtures the aspirations of local communities. As for our tourism, we are very proud that we are part of the UNESCO inscribed heritage list because of our famous Hongduan rice terraces. So the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization Heritage List as a Living Cultural Landscape in 1995 included Hongduan as one of its lists, and it's something that we are proud of. So aside from this man-made tourist attraction, we also have our natural tourist attractions to include our hot spring, our Mount Napulawan, and our Valentimol Falls. Next, please. So aside from those attractions, we also have our festivals that draws tourism activities in the municipality. First is our Tungo at Hongduan. It is a 3-day activity that showcases the display of indigenous arts and crafts, as well as agricultural product displays. The term Tungo refers to the rest period of the agricultural cycle, specifically after the planting season. Next, please. The Uyaoy at Hongduan, the Uyaoy Festival, is the second festival. It's a prestige rite as it is a long and the most expensive festival performed by the wealthy people, or the Kadangyan as we call it here. It is conducted every after 3 years, and it highlights the conduct of rituals like Naba and Pinhodan, which is the dancing of native dances in the municipality of Hongduan. The third festival is the Punno. Next, please. The Punok is traditionally a post-harvest festival or post-harvest tagging ritual of Barangay Hapao, participated by the two other adjacent barangays, namely Baang and Nungulunan, as a form of thanksgiving for a successful and bountiful harvest. It is performed at the river featuring the Kinaag and the Pakid. Next, please. So, the Punok is part of the Hua or Hua. It is a 2-day festival led by the Dumupag. The Dumupag is the designated family to lead this festival. So, on the first day is the Baki and the Inom, and on the second day is the Punok. So, for the first day, the Baki and the Inom, next please, is where the shaman or the lead priest or the native priest leads the Baki, or it's a ritual for before the conduct of the Punok. In here, animals are being sacrificed, specifically the chicken, wherein the biles are being checked if it is good or not. So if the native priest check the bile as good, then an elder will shout at the elevation of the rice terraces for the people to know that a Punok will be held the next day. Further, during this day is also the Inum, wherein wherein rice wines are being served by the Dumupag, and the people are allowed to drink and have merrymaking. They are not allowed to eat rice or eat any food during the Inum. It's only for the rice wine. So the next day is the Punok. Punok is featuring the Kinaag and the Pakid. So the Kinaag is made up of rice stalks, usually formed in a ring-shaped or a human-like figure for the people to tag on, or for the people to hook their Pakid with. And they are being decorated with the donga or the tea plant. Next, please. So the next day, during the Punok, community members from the 3 adjacent barangays parade and meet at the river. And as they are nearing the river, next please, they dance and they showcase their kinaag, their pakid, and as they are nearing the river, they taunt each other. And upon arriving at the river, the lead or the leader will perform the gopa or the prayer for each participants to be good and for the conduct of the punuk to be a success. So the 3 barangays with their constituents are actually cheering for each other, and they are led by their barangay captains. Next, please. So after the gopa, they will be performing the tagging ritual in the river. So the packet is hooked on the kinaag, and each team will have to use their forces to tag to get the item, and the winner to be declared is to wear the kinaag or the item being tagged is near to its side. So the declared winner is happy because it is their belief that by winning the punuk, they will have a bountiful harvest the next agricultural cycle. Next, please. So after the tagging ritual, they will let the kinaag flow into the river so that the people downstream will be notified that punuk was done and the harvest season at the upstream area is already concluded. Next, please. So aside from the tugging ritual, the people also of Hongduan added other activities for just like the upuhan hiyahya and the wrestling in the river or bultu. Next, please. So as to sustainability of the activity, the punok can only be sustained by the participation of the community and the Dumupag family. And aside from this, the local government unit of Hongduan also approved the Municipal Ordinance number 80, series of 2018, entitled An Ordinance Institutionalizing the Annual Celebration of Punok every month of July or August in the Municipality of Hongduan and providing funds thereof. This is for the other logistics that will be needed in the conduct of the Punok. Further, transfer of tradition from the Dumupag family is very important. If the Dumupag decided not to continue, then there will be no punok to be done. And the participation of younger generations in the conduct of the rituals is also very important, as they will have knowledge and experience regarding what is the activity all about, and they will live onto it during their lifetime. And lastly, the participation of all the community members is a must. Without the community members participating in the conduct of the punok, then it will not be that successful. Next, please. So, as to tourism and the conduct of punok, as you can see in the pictures, yearly there is an increase in the participants and also an increase in the viewers and in the visitors. So, with the conduct of this punok, we are very much happy that we are recording an increase in tourist arrivals, which help in boosting the economic activities in the municipality. So this is all, and I thank you.
네, 고맙습니다.
Yes, thank you very much for your
필리핀의
presentation.
이푸가오주 홍두안 지역에서
On Hongduan
그
of
줄다리기
Ifgao,
의례와
you've talked
놀이민,
about the tugging rituals and games,
특히
particularly
이와
punok,
관련된 계단식 노원과의
and
관계성을
also
어떻게
on the
관광과
rice
간에
terraces.
접목을 시키면서 어떻게
We
전승될 수
talked about how this can be
있는지
linked with
이 지역
tourism and also the
원주민들이
importance
보시다시피
of
아주
transmission. And as you can
화려한
see, the community
경복
members
옷이
are all
입고
wearing
어떻게 보면
beautiful
우리나라
traditional
시루버듯이
attire.
여러 또
And
줄다리기에
you
또
can
이
see that
안무를
the
땡겨내는
tugging
이런
rituals
모습을
also
보여주잖아요.
involve
그런
wrestling as well as
모습들을
pulling the kina.
전승되는 어떤 관광 산업 속에서
And I believe that this is
현지인들이
a key
살아가는
part of
하나의
tourism,
그
and it can
하나의
be
그
a critical factor for the
에너지원으로서
community
주민들이 또
members
감사하는
as it
이런 많은
motivates them.
일들을
And it's also about
잘
giving thanks to
해주신 것
their
같습니다. 다시 한번
ancestors. So thank you very much
감사드리고요.
for your
세
presentation.
번째
And let us now move on
발표는
to the next
홍보란
presentation.
측면에서의 접근인 것
The next
같습니다.
presentation is
여러분도
particularly
뉴스를
on
통해서 다
promotion. I'm
보셨겠지만
sure that you all
최근 한국
saw on the
관광공사
news,
홍보 영상이 국내는
which
물론 전
is the
세계를
video
감동을
of
하고
Korea
있다고
Tourism
하는데요.
Organization
이번에는 그
that
영상과
received the
관련된
spotlight around the
본문을
world.
보시고
And I would like to
관광
invite our
브랜드업
next speaker who
차원에서
has
발표를
a
들어보시기
great relevance
바랍니다.
with this
아마
video, and will be talking about
이 대학
about the
보면은 이
importance of
관광
brand.
어떤 이 컨텐츠 중에서의
The
최고의
university that
대학이라고 볼 수
this
있는데요.
speaker is from is probably
세종대학교
the most
이슬기
prominent
교수님
university when it
모시겠습니다.
comes to content. So
이슬기
let me now invite
교수님께서는
Professor Lee Seul-ki of Sejong
2020
University.
관광 브랜드 캠페인이란 그런
In the
주제로
2020
발표를
tourism brand
해주시겠습니다.
campaign,
발표
he played a pivotal
부탁드리겠습니다.
role, so he'll
많이
be giving us
기다리셨죠?
presentation on that campaign. So please, your presentation.
네, 좌장님 감사드립니다.
Thank you very much to the
Hello,
moderator.
good afternoon to you. I think I need to make a few acknowledgments before I start my presentation, because the campaign itself is actually not my campaign, but rather my good colleague, Mr. Chung-sub Oh Chung-sub. He works for the Korea Tourism Organization and was recently awarded a recognition or prize from the President of the Republic of Korea for his endeavor in this campaign. So as the chair of this session mentioned, I will talk about the 2020 National Tourism Branding Campaign, which was a huge success for not just the Korea Tourism Organization, but for the entire tourism industry. And I think there are a few takeaways that tugging ritual ceremonies might take in order to publicize and increase the interest on what we consider as traditional culture. So this presentation has already been presented to the Department of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines before, and I need to mention that as well. And it has been a little bit modified to accommodate some of the features of this event. Okay, so first I'll talk a little bit about the 2020 strategy and 5 major areas of improvement for the Korea Tourism Organization, because they had a mission. And after that, as we all know, there has been a unprecedented circumstance due to the coronavirus, and they have changed their mission, and therefore the advertising campaign, which has been largely dominated by celebrities and big tourism demand generators, into somewhat of a softer approach. And then I'll talk about the 2020 campaign. So at the start of 2020, the Korea Tourism Organization has been focusing on creative mission, creativity, somehow being incorporated into their advertising campaign. But the strategy was quite straightforward before the coronavirus. So the long-term marketing strategy by the organization was to become an organization that promotes and facilitates tourism as an industry, driving growth and contributing to better quality of life. So both income or economic impact as well as quality of life. And the 3 management goals by 2024 was to increase the inbound tourists by 27 million, high value visitors, because we have been predominantly attracting group tourists, which is not considered a very lucrative market in terms of value creation or additional value generation, and also spread that to regions. So right now, before coronavirus, most of the tourists were concentrated to Seoul and Jeju, and maybe Busan, but not to other areas. And we think that this is a bad thing, because tourism industry would promote both economic impact as well as quality of life, better quality of life. And we want that to spill over to the regions. So marketing program was developed based on that management goals and tactics under them. So platform marketing, storytelling, smart tourism, viral marketing, and destination marketing strategy were considered by the start of the year. Okay, so early 2020, we thought that coronavirus was either not that serious or somehow be overcome by maybe mid or late year 2020. But then drastic measures were beginning to be contemplated, because everybody found out by the mid 2020 that the coronavirus situation was not getting any better, even when the summer season came. And also international travel was something that is not to be foreseen in the near future. So the advertising campaign was required to make a strategic revision. And that I'm sure you'll all agree that we don't advertise to attract tourists in the near future. Nowadays, we don't, because it's not possible. But we need something that still stimulates interest and sustains consideration on international travel to Korea after all this is over. So in doing so, Mr. O, not myself, applied what is called the Maya principle, most advanced but acceptable. So he's a very creative person, and he wants to apply creative things, but they also need to be acceptable, right? So if it's not accepted by the public, then the effects of publicity programs can be quite doubtful. So B-class culture, I'm sure everybody knows this by now, is quite popular in Korea, widespread in the world because of this guy. So Mr. Tsai has been quite famous internationally. And this is just one example of what is considered a B-rated culture product in Korea. So many of the comedy shows, advertisements, the bottom right posters, you see these, right? The birds here and the person here, he's actually a historical figure, but these are actual posters of tourism promotion or campaign posters that are used by regional governments in Korea. Interesting, right? Because, you know, in terms of the quality of art, we think that it's quite unusual, unconventional, and probably something that you wouldn't use for, you know, official tourism promotion campaign. But we do, and we think that such unorthodox method can sometimes provoke interest of the general public, who are very, very familiar with now, very accustomed to good scenery and beautiful images and maybe celebrities, right? So if we are to compete in that space, I think we need to invest more. But right now, it's just not that time where tourism is materialized. So softer approach is required, and to efficiently stimulate interest, we need something of a creative measure. So here are some buzzwords. Mr. O is all about keeping up to date with these advertising campaigns, what and why, staying on the line, storytelling. These are some of the principles that he has applied in his marketing campaign. And he focused on some keywords such as welcoming, because right now it's not that, you know, people can travel to Korea from foreign countries. And we don't advertise to stimulate current demand, but we just want to be not forgotten or remembered, considered when all of this is over. So such messages could be created by not by celebrities, which would used to be the norm, and not by provoking interest in a way that stimulates people's emotions and intentions to travel to Korea immediately. But rather than that, we just want to maintain interest. After that, he considered the intermediary or the platform to send out messages, and he thought that YouTube would be the better option because it is primarily based on videos, and also all these considerations on users and how far you can reach with these messages and what kind of content he could deliver through the platform. So YouTube. Innovations that he considered, we say contactless or untagged in Korea in terms of not requiring physical contact. Z generation, which are the new norm in governing cultural advancement. K prevention, which is something that we take pride ourselves in, and digital campaign. So considering these methods, the 2020 campaign was developed. So some philosophies and creativities like masks that promote the Korea Tourism Organization was used along the way. The digital transformation led Mr. O to produce and implement the global campaign, including a couple projects. So the primary message here is that Korea as a country is a welcoming destination. That's where this comes from. Our hearts are always open, right? The integrated slogan. And to do so, the KTO has recruited not a celebrity, not a big name. Someone who can be intimidating does not quite fit the criteria here, right? So someone who is less known, but somehow more friendlier in terms of creating a welcoming atmosphere. And name of the group is called ITZY, and they have been promoting ambassadors of the campaign since last year. I guess this is the most noteworthy part, where the destination advertisements or marketing videos have primarily been concentrating on beautiful scenery and maybe tourist activities there. But right now, we don't have any tourists. So rather than promoting a tourist activity at a certain destination, the KTO has decided to just show the destination without the tourists, but somehow exciting stuff. And maybe some of this is B-rated because you see all these funny dances and unconventional images going on there. But this has been a huge success because it still provokes interest and does not conflict with the goals. So still the objectives of the advertising campaign was achieved. Very huge response, very favorable and huge response from the critics and general public. Once again, recently, the president has awarded him a very selective prize that is going to the public officials who have been, contributing with creative tactics. So it was such a huge success that requests from other regional tourism organizations have also followed. This is Gangneung, Andong, and Mokpo. But as you know, somewhere along the line, these creative programs gets old, right? So people anticipate what's going to be followed easily, and then the effectiveness suddenly deteriorates. So new concepts or new props were also added, like you see these pink suits, other arrangements, and also more musical hooks and comic elements. So somewhere in these videos there are like hidden rabbits, and I'm sure you might enjoy at least once finding them. And then I guess this is the important part for today's takeaway. So because the B-rated video actually used updated or modern version of traditional music, people started gaining interest on traditional Korean music. It's called pansori, but it is not the original or traditional version. It has been modified to meet the requests or the demand of the current Z generation consumers. But after that, people started, taking more interest in pansori. And these videos, the traditional version, right? Traditional version with the scenery here of the destinations with the traditional pansori has also gained popularity. So these videos are also being promoted on YouTube now. Okay, so and Feel the Rhythm of Korea, it does not limit itself to, the campaign does not limit itself to traditional version too. So the current up-to-date or K-pop version of that also is being promoted with the friendly faces here of the tourism ambassadors. And even further, you can also do similar creative marketing tactics with the characters, the cute ones. So Kingdom Friends were developed to somehow deliver, once again, friendly, not intimidating messages. And these are the characters that have been developed and right now being actively used. So you see them on SNS. You can also, I think Mr. O is trying to also develop products in cooperation with destinations. So very soon, I think some of them already, you can see them on the market, on t-shirts, maybe if you're using a messenger service, you can also find them there too. So the videos are on YouTube. I'm pretty sure you might want to check that out. And once again, the emojis are also being developed. I'm pretty sure one of these messengers would be make available these characters in the near future as well. Okay, so and all of these once again meet the objectives of the marketing team. Okay, how they brand Korea as a tourism destination, and in this time and era where international travel is not so easy or close to impossible, what kind of messages you want to send. So this is impersonating the characters, and a lot of these messages eventually create a personality for these emojis or characters. And in the long run, the Korean tourism organization believes that it would be effective in delivering softer messages rather than showing grand scenery and big A-list stars. We think that this is more of a long run effective marketing approach. Something to also provoke interest. This has been this was last year actually, where people meet contactlessly throughout the globe by a event and this was called IY Kung Challenge. So celebrities and also close up or wrap up with the Inaochi band, the traditional music band that was performing in the promotion videos. I guess I only have 15 seconds, so I'll hurry. But Tug of War also in a similar situation that the current demand may not be so visible, but somewhat of a modification or accommodating the current culture might be quite helpful in not only stimulating the current demand, but also provoking interest on the traditional version, just as Korea Tourism Organization did. So I think I ran out of my time. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee talked to us about the 2020 Korea brand campaign, talked about the very successful brand campaign launched by KTO and how we can think about definitely preserving tugging rituals and games in the prototypical fashion, but also to try to think about the new contemporary demands. And maybe think about how to incorporate B-class culture into a very creative type of a marketing campaign. I think that given the fourth industrial revolution, this aspect of creativity is a very important element. So I think that was a very relevant presentation. Thank you very much for that. So now I'd like to move on to our last presenter in the second session. It's surprising how fast time goes. Our next presenter is from the Cambodia Ministry of Culture, Bun Sreivy. Bun Sreivy is a director at the ministry in Cambodia, and the director is going to talk about comparison between tangible and intangible cultural heritage.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sreivy, and I'm working at the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts, in particular in the Directorate General of Techniques for Cultural Affairs. My topic is to compare between the tangible and intangible cultural heritage in Cambodia. So this is my outline. I will briefly give the historical background and then followed by the ministry responsibility and how we are doing right now, like to preserve and safeguard, also promoting the cultural heritage in the country. And then I will have a few paths for the key challenges and then with the conclusion. So to start with my presentation, as I mentioned that I would like to have the brief history background. Here I'm showing a picture of the a cave that called Ang Spin, which is located in the northwest of Cambodia. And this cave is the prehistorical site, which is dated to 70,000 BCE. And it's maybe it's not maybe, it is the oldest one to date in the country. And as you might already know that Cambodia has like the early history that we have a very big like influence from India. So this is one of the example of a temple which is in Taka province. It is called Mahasram Prisai, and this temple is dated to 5th to 6th century AD. And stylistically, this temple that you can see that it's much similar to the temple located in the south of India. And this is just one of the example, but we also have like thousands of temples which is exist in the country and beyond. And through time, the stylistic of the temple it's developed like through time and through the local taste. So Here I just wanted to like show one of the example that the previous temple that I show is pre-Angkorian period, but this is the Angkorian period, and you already know that the Angkor Wat temple that it is in the Angkor period. And this temple, as you see that we cannot find anywhere else in the world. So as I mentioned that the knowledge and through time has changed the belief of the people. So like it really different from the Indian style that as I mentioned earlier. And in terms of comparing these two, like tangible and intangible cultural heritage, these two areas cannot be separated, because like to make to build a temple or making an object and artist the object, that we need the knowledge of the people. So this cannot be separated. And like before the Cambodian, like we believe in the Hinduism, but today we believe in Theravada Buddhism. So here's just the example that through time, even the belief has changed, but people still engage and like worship to the temple. Here is one of the example of the Buddha rituals that the community that who living in that areas, like they perform a ritual that which is from Theravada Buddhist, and they walk clockwise like the temple like 3 times, and before they're going to conduct the ritual of that ritual like in Buddhist monastery. And here I would like to like give the kind of how the ministry responsible for the tangible and intangible cultural heritage. And here the Directorate General of Techniques for Cultural Affairs, one of the tasks is to safeguard and promote the intangible cultural heritage. And we have 5 sub-departments, such as Department of Culture, the Department of Fine Art and Handicrafts, Department of like Cinema and Cultural Diffusion, and Department of Performing Arts, and Department of Book and Reading. And here I just want to give some example of the effort that the ministry done to preserve and safeguard, promote the cultural heritage through legal frameworks. So here is just a few examples of this is the national policy for cultures, and I'm sorry that we only have the Khmer version, that we don't have English, so I'm sorry for that. But the cultural policy itself is trying to promote and safeguard like both the tangible and cultural heritage. But in comparison, like for the tangible cultural heritage, we can see that it seems that the attention that really focus on the tangible, because we have like more support from like even from national level to international level through the projects, like through the restoring project of the temples, and also through the international committees such as the ICC Yongho and ICC here that focus on preserving and promoting the tangible. However, if we compare to the ICH in Cambodia, like everyone know about like the temple, for example, the Angkor Wat, but we have like 5 elements that inscribed into the UNESCO list. However, not many people know about the ICH, like even the community themselves. As I mentioned that the intangible cultural heritage is support, done by the Directorate General of Technique for Cultural Affairs, and one of the activity plan is we are mapping the inventory list for the of the nation, and this was engaged like by the provincial department and also the community themselves. And through this, we can identify all the elements, the ICH elements within the country. However, this work needs to be more updated, and the inventory list also needs to be updated. So this is what we are trying to work on the list. And one of the other example is recently we have a project like to revitalize the ICH elements. This is I just want to raise an example of a community which is not far from the Phnom Penh city, and this is led by the females like master. There are only few of them survive, and we are so proud that this only few survivors, but they're trying to safeguard their element through transmitting their knowledge to younger generation, and this is just very rare to see in the within the country. And another activity is we are trying to do research and documentation. Like through this project, we gather master researchers and experts from different skills, like to come together and discuss, and then we publish like many kind of ICH elements, and we are trying to in the goal of to reach all level of people. And this is another activity has been implemented through the education. Through the education, we first we have the formal education that we are collaborating with the private sectors. That we have a case study, like we choose a specific high school in the city, and then we try to integrate the arts form into the education. And for the informal education, we are trying to support and encourage the community within the country to engage with us by transmitting their knowledge, because ICH is not, as I mentioned, that it might be easy to be forgotten if it is not practiced. So we are trying to, in whatever we can, to support the master and to encourage them to teach young generations. On top of that, each year to safeguard and promote the tangible and intangible, we conducted like festivals and other cultural events like within the city and also to the provinces. And we are not only focused on the Cambodian, but also to the minority of people to engage with us. I just want to raise some few of the key challenges that we have been faced. So even we are trying so hard to promote the ICH, like I mentioned earlier, that the tangible is, if we compare, like the tangible is much more support and get more attention to the areas rather than the ICH. So even we're trying so hard, but we still have the challenges with the lack of public awareness, and also the limited research and documentation, because not many people are interested in these topics. And on another challenge is the economic challenge. Like we can see that through our reports, like many artists, they gave up their jobs, like as an artist, like migrate to the other countries to find another job and get up the status as an artist. So this is, you can see, it is very a big concern for us. And lastly, it's the management, which it's about like human resource and the mechanism that we are trying to promote and trying to get more people to engage with us. So to find these key challenges, we will find the solution, and we will put the activity plans to make sure that those can solve these challenges. And for this, I also would like to emphasize that, as I mentioned, like between the two tangible and intangible cultural heritage, there is a huge gap between these two. The ICH elements is many of them will be disappear, especially without practice or engage from the community themselves. And especially in this the global pandemics, like many communities that they didn't perform or celebrate the community, like the heritage, that the elements that they usually do, like within the year, like in the specific time of the year that they are supposed to celebrate or perform that kind of ritual, but because of the COVID pandemic, that they couldn't perform or celebrate. So this is the big concern for us, and it might be those elements might be disappear if the community stop practicing their element that they supposed to do. So yes, I would like to conclude here that there is a big gap between like tangible and intangible cultural heritage. People are more interested and engaged with the tangible rather than intangible cultural heritage. So thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much for your
좀
presentation.
차이가 있어서 제가 조금 기다렸습니다.
There is
우리
a time
김수레비
difference,
선생님께서는
so there was a slight
캄보디아의
time gap. So
유무형문화유산이라는 주제를 가지고
there was that
캄보디아
brief silence, but at any rate,
무형문화유산을
the
소개하고
presentation
계시는데요.
was on tangible and
이러한 그
intangible
유무형은 분리될 수
cultural
없는
heritage,
그러면서도
and she mentioned that
사찰을
the
지키기
two
위해서는
go hand in
무형문화유산으로
hand.
여겨지는 사람들의 기술과
And
기술에 대한
she
지식이
also
필요하다
mentioned that it's
하는데
important that the skills and
그럼에도
knowledge
불구하고 양식을
be
보존하고 보호하는
transmitted if we
측면에서
really want tangible
문화유산은
heritage to
심각한
also
전생
flourish.
위험에
But
처해지고
ICH is
무형유산을
all the more
보호하기
threatened
위해서는
versus
전문적이고
tangible
공동의 노력이
heritage.
필요하다라고 하고
And she
또
also
시간이
mentioned
많이
that
걸리기
collaborative
때문에
efforts are necessary
숙련된
because
전문가들을
a lot of
적극적으로
time
훈련시켜야
is
된다라고 이런 말씀을
necessary
해주셨습니다.
to preserve and
아마 동해의
safeguard
양면성
ICH.
또
Therefore, we
동전의
need
양면성과
experts, we need
같은
support
그런
all
말씀을
around.
해주신 것 같습니다.
So she talked about the
다시
two
한번 그
sides
좋은 발표 감사드리고요.
of
자,
ICH as
이렇게
well as
해서
tangible cultural heritage. So once again, thank you very much for your presentation. And that was the presentations by our four speakers. A big round of applause to all of our speakers for their wonderful presentations. Thank you very much. I believe we have about 10 minutes remaining, so let us engage in a brief discussion with our speakers. As I have mentioned, we will be also catering to the questions on the chat box, but before that, let me pose the questions for our speakers. And if there are any questions on the chat box, I'm sure that our staff will relay that to me as the moderator. So my first question, culture is composed of various traits, and the traits sometimes converge and sometimes they diverge. We talk about convergence these days, and we can see that these characters come together and sometimes they separate. So what can we do for sustainability? I think that was the main theme of the presentation. So my first question to you, convergence can be A plus B equals C, but sometimes it could be D, or sometimes it could be E. But then for certain cases, only A or B may remain. So if we take this into account, culture is something that's ever evolving. This is a characteristic of culture because it's ever changing. And if the cultural characteristics change or evolve or disappear, how can we call this culture? Does it still carry the value as culture? In other words, some people are criticizing the fact that culture is only used as a certain resource for certain activities. I know that our speakers have been focusing on not just about maintaining the original form, but on the importance of the evolution and change to culture. So then, when we think of preservation as well as change to cultural traits, what is your perspective? So maybe I would like to ask Mr. Kim Jong-un on how he thinks about this comment. And I do have a separate question for Professor Hee. So I will ask the question to you afterwards. And also from the Philippines and Cambodia, if you do have any comments that you would like to add, that would be great. So please first, Mr. Kim.
Okay, the mic appears to be working now. If I go back to my presentation, I did talk about the prototypical form of festivals and the prototypical form of tugging rituals and tugging games. If we take a look at the many festivals that are being held right now and the way that people perform and practice tugging games, there's the aspect of transmission and preservation and the aspect of contemporary reinterpretation. And there's a gap between the two, between the tradition and contemporary practice of the festival. So there is a gap, and we have to really think about that. In the case of the Philippines and Cambodia, I think that much of these customs are being practiced in their prototypical fashion. This is based on my own personal experience when I visited those countries and saw the tug-of-war there being practiced in person. But in the case of Korea, I think there are two tracks. There's that aspect of preservation and transmission, and then there's a separate way of contemporary reinterpretation of festivals. And there's a gap because there was a time in our history when these traditions were cut effectively. In our history, they were not practiced for several years, and then they were picked up later on, and they were picked up as a way of part of festivals. So if we're to give another purpose to these festivals, then that would rightly be transmission and preservation. Instead of giving these festivals or these tug-of-war elements a separate purpose, I think that it would be more effective for us to revert back to the original prototypical purpose, which is transmission and preservation. So you're saying that the prototype and festivals, there's a big gap between the two, but you're arguing that the festivals should incorporate the prototypical elements. And especially when humanity first came into the world, people all did these things just very naturally. I mean, we came up with the word festival. We talk about festivals now, but our ancient forefathers did not think about it in the form of festival. So I think that, yes, I understand your explanation much better after this question and answer segment. Would our representative from Cambodia or the Philippines like to add to this thought? Please raise your hand.
없으십니까?
No?
네, 없으신 것 같습니다.
Okay,
두
so
번째
I
질문
don't
드리겠습니다.
believe there are any comments, but I would like
오늘
to
두
move on
번째
to the
질문은
second question.
아마
The second
정말
question today is
저도 그 박물관에서 한 30년 근무를
this
하면서
is based on my own
마케팅
personal
홍보라고
thinking
하는 것이
because
굉장히
I've been
중요성을
working at
가지고
at a
있는데요.
museum for
우리
30
이수진
years,
선생님
and I know
가지고
that
직접
marketing is very
발표까지 해주시면서
important for
직접 아마
all of these
관광공사
museums and
KTO의 이
art
홍보를
galleries and etc.
만드신 데 참여하신 거 아닌가라는
Mr.
생각이
Lee
드는데요. 우리
did an
이수진
excellent
선생님에게
job,
좀
especially in
질문을
his
드리도록
English
하겠습니다.
presentation. So I would like to
이번
ask
관광공사
Mr. Lee
영상이
a
정말
question.
핫했다고 하는데요.
I know that the
이세계
KTO, the Korea
교수님께서
Tourism
보시기에 이러한 그
Organization's
B급 문화,
recent
이게
brand
잘못하면 이제
campaign
B급
was
문화라고
really
할 때
successful.
잘못된 오해의 소지가 생길 수도 있어요.
And
사실은.
yes, you
네,
talked about
어떤
this
A급이고
B
어떤
class
B급이냐.
culture. I
잘 나가는
think
연예인은
that
A급이고
could
그렇지
be
않은 건
seen
B급이냐.
as something.
오해도 생길 수 있는데
We have to be very
과감하게
careful
그
about how
B급문화라는
we
말씀을 해주시면서
phrase, A class and
수요가 계속
B
이어질
class,
수
A class
있을지
celebrities, B class
그리고 사실
celebrities. We don't want
공사에서
to
성공하다 보니
offend
지금
anybody.
국가기관이잖아요.
But
거의
the
중국기관을 하다
KTO was
보니
very successful with
여기저기
its
많은
recent brand
정보기관에서도 이런
campaign,
방식들을
and you are a
많이
governmental
활용하고 있는 것
organization,
같은데
and I know that many
저희 너도
regional
따라하는
local
거죠.
tourism offices are
여기서
doing the same thing.
교수님께서는 이에 대한
Now,
시너지를
if
좀 말씀해 주셨어요.
these regional
오히려 이러한
organizations were
활용이
all to do the same thing, that
획일화되고
could lead
정통성을
to
잃어버리는
synergy.
것은
But
아닌지 그런
won't
하나는
that
우려가
mean
됩니다.
that everything
이
starts
문제에
looking the
대해서 어떻게
same?
생각하시는지
All the regional
이게 이제
provinces,
저희같이
if they do
인문학을
the
하는
same thing,
사람들과
all these
특히 이제 그
quirky,
예술을
innovative
뭐
campaigns,
디자인이라든지
won't they all look the
영상이라든지
same?
예술을
And
하시는
won't they
분들은
won't they
좀
seem
생각하는
standardized?
생각이 좀 다르잖아요.
Because
창의성이 굉장히
this is,
뛰어나시잖아요.
I
그런
guess,
측면에서 좀
it's a
보충
way
설명
that
부탁드리도록
museums
하겠습니다.
think differently compared against a tourism
네, 저
organization. So I
답변은
would like to
그냥
ask what you think
한국말로
about that.
드리겠습니다.
Yes, in my response, I would like to
저양님 뭐
go
좋은
back
질문
to
감사드리고
the Korean language.
이제
Thank you for the great question. We talk about B class culture. It appears that we're talking about a hierarchy. There's very sophisticated culture and a lower form of culture.
저예산으로 이제 만들다가 보니까 뭔가 투박함 그리고 정돈되지 않은
No,
그리고 뭔가
this typically entails a low budget campaign.
특히 뭐 블록버스터 영화들과의 차이
It's similar how you would see the gap between Hollywood blockbuster movies and movies with a lower budget. And this is a kind of cultural phenomena that we already see. But this doesn't mean that when I say B-class culture, it doesn't necessarily mean that this culture is very inferior, but that the visual expression of B-class culture is a little bit different from A-class culture. But you're very right in your question. When these things become popular, there's going to be this huge proliferation of more and more B-class campaigns, B-class marketing, and then they will all seem to be the same, and people are going to lose interest. And so that means their value will be eroded. This is definitely not something that we should abuse. That's going to be very dangerous. We have to make use of them appropriately as a means for certain ends, but we don't have to necessarily do everything in a B-class format. I think for some posters or some brand campaigns that especially reach out to the younger generation, like millennials or Z generation, we can try to make use of different elements, not just B-class culture. But B-class culture can be an option out of many. And also the other concern is that we don't want to infringe on the value of cultural heritage or heritage values that we want to preserve. Which is why if you look at the KTO videos, yes, we incorporate some B-class elements, but we also try to incorporate traditional music and traditional performance, not in a way that derides the traditional music. We don't want to make it seem inferior and boring. We're trying to have a synergy effect between the two. So in marketing tactics, we want to use B-class, but in a very careful and well thought out way. Thank you very much. I think Dr. Lee, you talked about how we can try to have creativity, popularity, and marketing value while approaching something that is very common and ordinary and something that is very familiar to people. And you're saying that it's important for us to try to keep the content as is or maybe have a sort of a new contemporary twist to it. If we do that, then we don't we're not going to make it seem very boring or standardized. I think that was a great answer. I don't think that there are any questions from the floor. I believe that the four presenters did an excellent job in covering their information, which is why there is no more questions. So I think we can close with the two sessions and also the two questions also, because we have to move on to the next session. We are running out of time. In this session, we talked about sustainability and convergence. I think it was an opportunity for us to rethink those concepts. I know you talked about many different things in your presentation, but with that, we would like to close this session as we think forward into the future. We've heard from four speakers, Mr. Kim, Haydee Hermosora, Mr. Lee, Ms. Bun Sreivy. Thank you very much for being with us. And also right now is the weekend. The weather is really nice right now here in Korea. And we still have many people joining us online. So thank you very much to the audience in person. Now I'd like to hand over the microphone to our
Thank you, Professor,
MC.
and all four presenters. As a moderator mentioned, it's a Saturday, but everyone participate today, and once again, I really appreciate being here for today. Now let's move to the last part of the symposium, the future of tugging rituals and games panel discussion. Actually, the invited panelists, including the moderator, were deeply involved in the inscription of the element in 2015. Therefore, I'm pretty sure that you can actually enjoy this session to hear the deeper voices from them. As a moderator, Professor Sangmee Park from Hankuk University of Foreign Studies will facilitate the session. Professor, I'll hand over the microphone to the professor. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Sangmee Park from Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. I'm very glad to see old friends who worked together for the nomination of the tugging ritual and games. So very good to see you again, not in person, but I think this is good enough, and waiting for a better day. So this is the panel discussion on the future of the tugging ritual and games. And we'll talk about our experience during the nomination process and what has happened since the inscription. And we'll also discuss what we can do together for the future. So these are the questions that we can discuss. But before we start, could you introduce yourself briefly? Maybe following the order on our program, starting with Dr. Renee Talavera from the Philippines, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be involved in this significant activity. I'm Renee Talavera, Head of the Cultural Communities and Traditional Arts of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts in the Philippines. Good day.
Thank you. And according to the order, next is Mr. Siyonn Sophearith. Could you turn on the microphone, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Siyonn Sophearith. I'm Director General in charge of Intangible Cultural Heritage mainly. And it's nice to see you all. Thank you very much.
I believe next is Dr. Nguyen Kim Dzung.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to see you again. I'm Nguyen Kim Dzung from the Center for Research and Promotion of Cultural Heritage. I'm working in the ICH division. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last panelist is Dr. and Professor Yongho from Korea.
네, 안녕하세요.
Hello, everyone.
몇 차례 실제 현지 조사나 국제 학술대에서 자주 만나다 보니까 괜히 친숙해 보이고 반갑습니다, 모두들. 저는 그러니까 한국예술종합학교에서 연구하고 있는 허용호입니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Professor He. This year marks the 6th year since the inscription of the Tugging rituals and games in 2015. And I still remember the excitement that we had together at the Intergovernmental Committee meeting, which was held in Windhoek, Namibia. So a lot has happened. And so first of all, I would like to ask you what has happened in each of the countries collaborated in the nomination process. What kind of changes were there in the field of public awareness of the element? And what kind of safeguarding efforts for the heritage in your country? And at the same time, have there been any unexpected or unwanted consequences of inscription in your country? So we can share all these post-inscription experience so that we can learn from each other. So should we follow the same order, starting with Dr. Renee Talavera? From the Philippines.
Good afternoon once again. The punuk tagging ritual is constantly being practiced by the Tuwali Ifugao communities in the Philippines. Since it is a very significant heritage related to their agricultural cycle, they ensure to perform these and other attendant rituals every harvest season. The inscription of the punuk has increased the awareness of the public about this ICH. Hence, continuous efforts are being conducted to safeguard the punuk. The NCCA has always been in coordination with the local government of Ifugao for the safeguarding of punuk, and internationally, promotions were spearheaded by the ICHCAP through various publications, the conduct of 2019 Korea-Philippines Research Exchange Program. This was held during the Punuk Festival in Ifugao, where the Juldarigi practitioners were also able to participate in the tagging game. The exchange program allowed the sharing of experiences of the ICH element through an exhibit in the community and by providing resource persons from both countries and an opportunity for the Ifugao community to experience a glimpse on how Juldarigi is done during the exchange program. The ICHCAP also conducted the One Asia with Rope, an online celebration of the 5th anniversary of the inscription, where the Philippines was also able to participate in the sharing of the progress after the inscription. Punok is conducted to signify an abundant harvest of the Tuwali Ifugao community. It is usually held between July to August, but with no particular date, as the community members observe the moon first before finally conducting punok. In 2020, last year, despite the pandemic, the community still held the punok. The Ifugao relatively has low COVID cases, hence they still continued their tradition. However, a decrease in the participation of locals had been noticeable. No tourists and media were also present at the time. So the inscription of punok was generally more beneficial to the said ICH. The national and local government has been more supportive of the safeguarding efforts to ensure the viability of punok. Also, the communities seem to be more aware and prouder of their ICH, while the punok gain more respect from the outsiders and visitors who go to Ifugao to witness and experience this tradition. The communities have also been grateful to ICHCAP for these opportunities that let them present punok in an international platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Talavera. It's very good to know that punok is well and thriving, and also great to know that the Ifugao people are doing okay in this crisis. So can we move to Cambodia for the next presentation? Mr. Siyonn Sophearith, please.
Yes, I think after the inscriptions, we can see the positive signs on the practice of tagging rituals and game. The tagging rituals and game itself is very, very strongly associated with the agrarian rights. It's agricultural rights. It performed annually in order to open the tagging ritual itself. They have to break the rope so that it is the mark of the opening of the rice cultivation season. And it is performed right in front of the local deities. It is practiced annually. But during the time of pandemic and the COVID-19 last year, it was not. The small numbers of people are coming, especially the community themselves. It is very limited. But the outcome of the inscription itself, it's promoting the raising awareness among other peoples. And I don't see any, because it is my observation too, to the practice itself, I don't see any negative impacts, but the positive impacts on the local life, especially, during the time that we prepared the first the dossier in Korea. I've been with you and other good friends in Korea, we discussed. And then my research in the field, it was, a kind of not knowing where the elements are practiced because there are limited informations and then things like that. But after the inscription itself, it's surprisingly, I know many places that local people, they take pride in bringing out their elements, showing them in where the social medias. I learn a lot because there are varieties of different sort of practices. Sometimes they use the bamboo sticks. Sometimes they use wine. Sometimes they use rope. They practice it in front of the local deity, the Nepal, stuff like that. You can learn a lot from that, and it means that all is that I would like to say that there is no negative impact, but it's good, a positive impact. It's not only on the tagging rituals itself, but also other cultural heritage elements. It inspired the local communities taking pride that, why the cultural element? Because for the community themselves, the tagging rituals and game, it's just normal. It is in their daily life. They never noticed. But when we, inscribed it like surprise. Why many other people are interested in these elements that is normal for us? Now they tend to take care of more and more of their, being aware of not only their own tagging rituals and game that practice in their daily life, but others. They like to share. They like to talk about that. That is what I noticed. So, our colleague from Philippines just mentioned, it was very unfortunate for Cambodia, to have we was about to host the community exchange, and our community members was very excited because first they haven't seen Korea, first they haven't flight, secondly they haven't been to Korea, but they hear a lot about the Korean community, K-pop that our colleague just mentioned, other stuff. So they was very excited to go to Korea, but unfortunately the COVID struck, and and everything is postponed. I'm very sorry for them, but they was very excited, and then we were ready to host. We prepared. We talked to the bearers in the one of the communities, saying that when our friends, colleagues from Tugging city coming to visit, we host them in the community, make them try the local food and stuff like that. So not only the tagging rituals itself, but also other elements we would like to introduce to our Korean colleagues and friends. This is very important, but it will happen, I hope, after the pandemic. So thank you for the bringing us together, through the multinational nomination. I think it's a great work, and it's wonderful job have been done. Especially the initiation from the Korean counterpart. Thank you very much for doing all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very good to know that the inscription contributed to raise the awareness of intangible cultural heritage, not only about the element itself, but intangible heritage in general. So I would say that is the primary purpose of having this kind of mechanism. Maybe we can now move to Vietnam to hear about what has happened by Dr. Nguyen Kim Trung, please.
Yes, hello again. In Vietnam, during a long period of time in the past, Keo Tugging game had been known by the public mostly as a sportive folk game and practiced largely in school or festive events across the country. Meanwhile, the tugging game that associate with rituals were only practiced within the communities in a few villages where this tradition has existed since a long time ago. In the context, in 2013, ICCAP launched a survey project to prepare for a multi-nomination to submit to UNESCO, inviting Vietnam to participate in, together with Korea, Cambodia, and the Philippines. And in 2015, we were so proud that the tugging ritual game of the 4 countries was inscribed in the UNESCO representative list. Actually, the processes of field survey and elaboration of the nomination finds, particularly in the description of UNESCO, have greatly raised the public awareness and visibility of the element. If before inscription, Keo Ko, the seated tugging game, was practiced and known mostly within the village communities. Now it has become known to broader society in province or city or even across the region and country. The communities have greater pride and sense of traditional values. Every concerned community has a set of strict rules on tugging practices. They uphold their traditional codes until today and continue maintaining their practice more regularly. For example, Mr. Ngo Quang Khai, head of the Trấn Vũ Temple Management Board in Long Biên District, Hanoi City, said, inscription of Keo Ko Ngoi, the seated tugging on UNESCO list, brings the local people greater pride, motivation, and enthusiasm in safeguarding their cultural values. And in Bắc Ninh province, after the inscription, the Hữu Chấp Keo Ko community decided to hold a festival tugging yearly, other than every 2 years as they did before. And for the Keo Song Raton tugging in Hương Canh, Vĩnh Phúc province, Mr. Trương Đức Tâm, a leader of the tugging team, said, Keo Song has become an annual tradition. Winning or losing in a tugging performance at the village festival is also a matter of honor. So the villagers always look forward to the festival with rattan tugging to happen. I'm sure that Keo Song will never disappear. Yeah. So about the safeguarding efforts, actually, big safeguarding efforts for the heritage have been made by concerned communities and local and central authorities through various measures below. Firstly, by maintaining the form of hands-on transmission during enactment of the element. New participants are instructed to practice tugging alongside experienced or senior participants and learn skills from them. And the second measure is engaging heritage education. Yesterday you had listened to Dr. Lê Thị Minh Lý, a very lively presentation on this safeguarding effort. So I need not to say more, but highlighting some of the examples. First is bringing school children to the heritage. From 2019, primary and secondary schools in Long Biên district organized student field trips to cultural heritage, including Trấn Vũ Temple, as part of their local cultural history program in their curriculum. And Trấn Vũ Temple, with the assistance of CCH, the Center for Cultural Heritage Promotion and Preservation. It had prepared a PowerPoint presentation and videos with subtitles on the tugging ritual and games to help students to understand the values of the element during their visit to the temple. And the other measure is bringing heritage to schools. Mr. Nguyen Văn Toan, a practitioner from Hiluchep village, told in 2018, Elderly Society, in collaboration with Hoa Long Primary School, held a Kelko festival for students. They went to school, introduced about the heritage, and instructed students how to tuck with a rope, following traditional rules. As a safeguarding measure is fostering promotion and exchange programs. After UNESCO's inscription, local people, especially the community of Khao Khong seated tugging at Junghwan Temple, Nguyen district, feel prouder and more enthusiastic in participating in the village yearly festival on the third lunar month. Besides, they want to promote their heritage and exchange programs. Mr. Ngo Quang Khai, again, said that whenever invited for tugging performance, especially in major celebration events, they are always willing to join, but never forget to carry out a full ritual, asking for their deity's permission for conducting a representation outside the community. They will only perform when such permission is granted. And actually, they have made several performance exchange in and outside Hanoi. For example, in 2018, community of Khao Khong in Long Biên district joined a performance exchange with the Federation of Korean Traditional Tugging Ritual and Games Transmission Organizations at Junghwan Temple and at several other places in Hanoi, like the Hanoi Museum or the Temple of Literature, etc. On occasion of the National Day on November the 23rd. And then in 2019, Khao Khong traveled to Korea to participate in the famous Jundariji Festival in Tugging City. The event has become a great pride and unforgettable memory for the community members. The Khao Khong community in Hiluchep, Bắc Ninh province also organized exchange presentation with tugging community in Thái Nguyên province in the same year in 2019. And in October 2020, representatives from the Khao Khong community seated tugging visited Khao Song Rattan tugging community in Hương Canh, Vĩnh Phúc province. They are expecting to make further visits to other tugging communities in Hanoi, in Bắc Ninh, Lào Cai, or Vĩnh Phúc provinces, etc. And they also wish to collaborate with other tugging communities in the region, if possible, in the future. And another safeguarding measure is increasing commitment and engagement of other stakeholders. Local governments and concerned authorities have been making efforts in introduction and promotion of its values. Some of the localities have specific policies for the elements, particularly the rattan tugging in Hương Canh and seated tugging in Thạch Bàn. For example, they provide large space in good conditions for the tugging performance and ensuring order and safety for the festival to happen, etc. And the central government has a policy of awarding best practitioners with honorable title of excellent artist or people's artist. And Mr. Nguyen Văn Se, age 94, was awarded title excellent artist in 2018. This is a great pride for the community and for himself. And Hanoi Department of Culture and Sports, in collaboration with CCH and local authorities, continue to conduct a comprehensive inventory of the element. And new discoveries during the field survey include Kelmore as a festival of Ngai Khê Village Communal House in Phú Xuyên District, Hanoi, or Khao Song in Vĩnh Tường District, Vĩnh Phúc Province, or Khao Co Community in Intangible provinces. And these newly findings will be deeply studied and invented soon, so that we can nominate it to the national list of ICH and to update find of our common heritage element.
Okay.
The NGO are also important. Yeah. The NGO are increasingly active in safeguarding ICH, including Tugging Ritual and Games, the Association of Cultural Heritage, and CCH are committed in playing the role of making close connections between local communities and central authorities, and between national and international Tugging communities as well, in order to provide a forum for exchanges and networking among Tugging communities. In December 2020, CCH, under the direction of the association, with support of the Hanoi City's Department of Culture and Sports, held a community seminar at Hanoi Museum, based on which the Vietnam network of Tugging communities was established under the decision of the association. And a Tugging Heritage Day was also dealt with. And maybe we may want to take the inscription day of UNESCO for the Tugging Ritual and Games as a National Tugging Heritage Day.
Okay, can we...
And about the unexpected consequence. Yes, the inscription stimulated efforts to restore the values, the own values of the element. This is truly good, but it also led to evoke questions and debate within the Tugging, seated Tugging Ritual and Games in Thạch Bàn, Long Biên District. Mr. Maitiling, a custodian of Trần Vũ Trần, told that in the past, only young men were allowed for tugging. Women were only involved to help. When the festival was revived after years of interruption, there were not enough men to participate in the tugging games. Meanwhile, women villagers were claiming for the right of equality with men. So the village therefore included women teams, and regardless of some village elders' disagreement. But after the inscription of UNESCO, some villagers want to resume the traditional rule with argument that seated tugging has become now intangible cultural heritage of UNESCO. So we are not allowed to distort the tradition. From then on, women are not involved in the tugging games anymore. So someone thinks that the concept of returning to own tradition by eliminating female tugging teams, a component that arose and became a regular practice in the festival for a number of years, needs further discussion among the manager, among the related experts and the community members. And for me, my raw opinion is that the right to decide must belong to the community. So by this occasion, may I ask, how do you think of this consequence? Any recommendation of you will be highly appreciated. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you for introducing a variety of safeguarding measures that have been implemented in Vietnam. And yes, we'll leave some time to learn from each other and discuss each other's cases. We can see that we do have a common element, but we have very different issues and different circumstances in these four countries. Lastly, I would like to invite Professor Yongho to introduce what has happened in Korea, the Korean 줄다리기.
2015년 등재를 전후한 한국의 양상에 대해서
2015
압축적으로
was a
말씀드리도록
pivotal year, so let me summarize what happened
2015년
before and after.
줄다리기가
In 2015, before the nomination, in Korea, tugging rituals and games, or 줄다리기, was a major ritual in the communities. It already had that position in the society. And in 2015, with the joint inscription of tugging rituals and games on the UNESCO representative list, the public were very proud of the fact that now its value has been acknowledged by an international organization. And in addition, in the case of 줄다리기, we had 4 countries represented here at the symposium. So we were able to also raise the awareness that tugging rituals and games have an international perspective to it, not only the holders and transmitters, but now we had an international audience. In the past, it was true that Korea thought that tugging rituals and games were something that was one and only in Korea. But now, with the joint inscription, we were able to understand that we have cases in Vietnam and also in the Philippines where there is this great harmony between human beings as well as nature, as well as in Cambodia, the very different modes of tugging rituals and games. So in other words, there was that awareness on this heritage that it had an international perspective to it. So once again, I believe that this was probably one of the greatest difference in the perspective amongst the holders as well as the public. And with regard to the transmitters, is that now we had transmission organizations come together. As we were preparing for the multinational inscription, we had a total of 6 transmission organizations that worked together. In the past, they worked in silos. However, these transmission organizations came together to collaborate. They also created a federation of organizations, and even after the multinational inscription, we do have them actively involved in raising visibility as well as engaging in various activities. Of course, we couldn't go to Cambodia due to COVID, but with Vietnam and the Philippines, the active exchange was underway through these transmission organizations as well as the federation. So that was a major change that we've seen. And maybe a negative aspect or an unexpected twist due to the multi-inscription can be summarized in 2. First, I want to put this very frankly and candidly, where in the process of multinational inscription, we had many communities from diverse countries that were involved in tugging rituals and games. And I think that there was this unexpected comparison amongst the rituals and games. In other words, maybe we're trying to assess who is more superior than the other. So in other words, they would think that, okay, this part, we're better. This part, we're more active. So when it comes to this single element, maybe there was a unexpected competition or a comparison amongst the countries, which was against the values of what UNESCO's representative list represents. But I think that exchange and field surveys and with exchange and sharing of materials and resources, I believe now we have that recognition that we have different circumstances and environments where we have rituals and games utilizing different materials and resources that exist in the relative environments. And I believe that now we understand this diverse value or the distinctness that exists among the different tugging rituals and games amongst these 4 countries. So I think this was an unexpected twist during the multinational nomination. This, I think, in some sense can be slightly negative in my view, but once again, unexpected. And the second unexpected twist is in the case of the Republic of Korea, when it comes to promoting visibility and popularization, and also in terms of disseminating tugging rituals and games, we've engaged in many demonstration events. But now we saw this expanding out as a performance. In other words, tugging rituals in games compared to other ICH of UNESCO is that this is a community effort, slightly different from other arts. But just like any traditional art, it seemed as if tugging rituals and games were converting itself into a performance rather than it becoming a community event. So this was unexpected, and I was a bit baffled with this twist. So in Korea, there was a lot of discussions underway with the community to understand what would be the right balance. And I think that this is a future task at hand for Korea. Thank you.
Professor Har. I think for all of us, the nomination process was a learning experience. And I think post-inscription outcome is also something that we can share and we can learn. And maybe we can prevent something that hasn't happened in one's own country but might happen in the future. So I feel like all of us in this panel are like veterans of nomination process. And I think one of the best things about multinational nomination is that inscription may be the goal for the time, but the process that goes to the inscription itself is also valuable because during the process we reflect upon our own heritage and we can compare, find common features. At the same time, we find cultural diversity in this element. So it really made us think about what the element is about. So let me ask you the next question regarding the nomination process. So as veterans of nomination process, if you were to do this nomination again, what should be different or what would you do differently? Have you thought about any of that? Maybe we can start with Dr. Talavera first.
I agree with you, Ms. BAK. Joint inscription greatly helps in the promotion of the ICH. Having the ICH exposed to others help it gain visibility while also gaining appreciation and respect for it. If we were to do this multinational nomination all over again, it is always important to note that at the local level, the community's voice and active engagement will always be vital and should always be at the forefront of any nomination, alongside with multi-stakeholders cooperation. At the same time, interagency cooperation and collaboration at all levels, from the local to the national, is important as well. This is not only during the nomination, but also in the safeguarding of the ICH. Indeed, the efforts and cooperation of all the countries realize this multinational inscription have been extremely remarkable. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Sophearith.
Yes, I think when I start participating in the preparation of the nomination file, and I had discussion with you, Professor BAK. You mentioned that, like we don't care, of course we care about the successful or not for the nomination, but the process is the most important. And I carry what you said, and then I transmit it, not the ICH, but your knowledge to my friends. Like this is the process I learned, and I learned how to look at the form. Now, I can, like prepare the documents myself along with the teams, and then I transmit that knowledge. Like that is the most important for my individual knowledge. I learn a lot from the process, like discussion, by looking at the form, what the form required, whether it has reflections on whether we nominated our safeguarding plan by the local community in compliance with the UNESCO requirements or not. It makes us reflect, and it makes us informing the communities about what we have learned from the like preparation of the document, because it's quite new to me, to be honest, the time that we prepare the document itself. For me, if you ask me to, like what if we have to redo the multinational nomination again, what should we do? And I think, what is the most important and the lacking in this is that in the engagement of the communities, I go and represent the communities, like speaking of the communities. I haven't heard about the voice from the communities. I went down there and then asking them, interviewing, talking to them, but not their voice exactly. I had one of the experience recently because Cambodian is nominating the martial art, the Cambodian national martial art, because we withdrew from the evaluation body, saying that the file is not sufficient in birth defer. And the evaluation body asked us to review and resubmit it. And then we invite all of those communities to come and work and look at the file. It was so excited. And I see the excitement from each individual of the masters, they come. And I would like, if we are to do, I don't think we go back to do that file again, but if we are to do another multinational nomination files, I think first of all, it is the encouragement from the communities, whether they want, for example, they nominate one ritual that is very similar to many other rice farming communities in Southeast Asia or in Asia in general. So if they suggested that the government must be involved in this, there must be agency. The government involvement is just to coordinate and help, because of course communities might not know the rule, the UNESCO rule and stuff like that. You have to usher them so that they can understand that. So it is them to take pride and to be proud. And when there is another multinational nomination, I would like to encourage as much as possible the exchange. Exchange itself, it's not just only the multinational nomination fight dossiers, but people learn from one another, make feeling love for one another. The communities exchange. I think the community people will be engaged and then contact and attach to one another due to the process. And I think that is if I want to do another multinational nomination again, I will do the best I can to engage the communities. And not only the multinational nomination, even whatever nomination that to be nominated, the communities must be involved. That is the crucial, and I think that is the most important. That's from my experience. And thank you, Professor Bab. I learned a lot from you.
Oh, thank you. I learned a lot from you because we were only thinking in the frame of the convention and Korea, but in the process of working with you, we learned a lot. I learned a lot from all of you. Is there anything that you would do differently, Dr. Nguyen Kim Jong?
Yeah, for me, every step has been carried out rationally and effectively. I cannot find any better method in preparing the nomination. But I have only one additional suggestion that during nomination process, experts of one participating country may be engaged in some certain field surveys or performance of other member countries for deeper and more comprehensive understanding of the common ICT element, if possible. And we may doing it by taking the meeting venues in a rotation principle. So each time we can experience our common heritage in different aspects. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor He, what would you like to do differently if you do it again? Yes.
끝나고 난 이후에 아쉬움이 있습니다. 하나는 그러니까 아까 베트남 선생님
As was mentioned by Dr. Nguyen Kim Jong, I cannot agree more, which is that, well, this is my personal experience where we went actually on site to the Philippines to see the demonstration of tugging rituals and games as well as in Vietnam. And I thought, oh, why didn't we include that in the dossier? As you all know, we had to summarize that in just a couple of sentences. But after I saw the tugging rituals and games of these other countries, I thought that maybe we could have had a more refined sentence into the dossier. Because in the case of 줄다리기 or tugging rituals and games, it's about nature, environment, and human beings all together. It's a harmony of all of these factors. So when we were preparing the multinational nomination, we were sharing materials, resources. We had international seminars, shared videos. But when I actually saw on site, it was completely different. It was a whole new story when I saw it directly, firsthand. So what I want to say is that all the tradition, the nature of the Philippines and people, to really have it in just one sentence was very difficult to do. And I thought that we should have done a better job. And also for Vietnam, the active and the energetic ritual and the ambience of the villages, it would have been great if we had more discussion to have it fully reflected in the sentences in the dossier. So I find that as a lacking. And also I believe that we're on the same page. I believe that my colleagues would feel the same when you saw Korea's 줄다리기. So if we do another multinational nomination, if we had another chance, I think I can maybe provide a better dossier with a better reflection of the true value of these tugging rituals and games.
After we do this kind of work, we have regrets and we know what to improve on. I think I was going to ask you another question related with the community participation, but Mr. Sophearith already answered that question. In fact, the multinational nomination process, in that kind of process, it is almost inevitable for the government take the lead. Right? Because we need the professional expertise to be shared with the participating countries. We also need the economic resources, and also the diplomatic efforts should be made to work among these different countries. So it is somewhat inevitable, but at the same time, like several of you have just said, it is very important for the communities to take the lead and actively participate in this whole process. The nomination can be much richer, I think, and diverse if we have community participation. I think this is rather easy in the case of European countries working together for some common shared element, because the NGOs activity and civil society has been very active in the field of intangible cultural heritage, and they can travel rather easily. So it has been the way in the European countries and maybe some other parts of the world, but in Asia Pacific, traveling is not always easy for many of us. So yes, I think the nomination of 줄다리기 or tugging rituals and games was one of the model case, I dare say, because we really shared and exchanged ideas. We exchanged documents and photos, but we also gathered in one place and had brainstorm. Not many countries do that, actually. They just work on individual files and they just put them together. That's the reality, but we did the textbook way. So I'm very proud of our common experience of nominating 줄다리기. Well, we have a little more than 10 minutes. I think maybe we can have about 2 minutes each to talk about the future. Now, what can we do for the safeguarding of the ICH, thereby contributing to the sustainable development of the communities and the country as a whole. So we all know that safeguarding ICH is an integral part of sustainable development, but what can we do specifically? Maybe can we reverse the order maybe this time? Would that be okay, Professor Ha? Maybe can we start with you?
예, 우선 저 역시 이제
First and foremost,
공동체의 적극적인 참여와
I
주도적인
also
역할이
believe that the
필요하다고
active participation and engagement of communities are pivotal, but as was mentioned by all of our panelists and as was mentioned by Professor Park,
한 가지 더
what I would like to add to all that
유네스코 차원에서
is that
차원에서
UNESCO,
경제와 관련된 시스템이나
when it comes to
제도를
nomination and inscription,
적극적으로 공동체
I
참여와
believe
전제에
that
가능한 방식의
it would be better for UNESCO to have a framework or elements included in this nomination process to induce the participation of communities. I think that we need such form and framework to make that happen. And with regard to sustainability, there are 3 suggestions that I would like to make. First, the 4 countries have already conducted the following, which is when it comes to safeguarding and transmission, we have been sharing various examples. There could be exemplars and best practices, or there could be cases of failure cases, which can serve as a lesson. And I think that it would be great if we can share all of these cases and examples and also have discussions. And to make this not impromptu, but have it a regular rise, maybe have an organization to do that. And I think that for sustainability, such a framework is necessary. So this is the very first suggestion I would like to make. An international organization, a regular platform to share cases would be the first suggestion. And second is to expand out the inscription. Currently, we have only 4 countries involved in this inscription, but I believe that it would be great if we can expand out the scope to involve other countries as well. So I think that we need to start that effort. And even within the 4 countries, I know that there are also various different communities that were not a part of this inscription. And it would be great to find ways to have them also take part. And I think discussions on this should start now to expand the scope of this inscription. And third suggestion is something that would take place simultaneously with the other 2 suggestions, where we need a systematic effort to put all of the details of tugging rituals and games in place, so on where it's preserved and practiced. So in other words, map this out. Have a tugging rituals and games mapping process to understand where it's being practiced, and to have all of the details organized in some format. It could be a tugging rituals and games dictionary or encyclopedia, to have some sort of publication that would include all of the items of tugging rituals and games. So if we can start that right now, I believe that this will promote sustainability and sustainable development of tugging rituals and games. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ho. Next is for Nguyen Kim Dzung for 2 minutes, please.
Yes, for me, the communities always call very important in the safeguarding of their own intangible cultural heritage. So they need to be supported to take initiative and play more active roles. And the government need to have stimulate the concerned community in taking initiative roles by creating favorable conditions for their regular practice and having incentive policies towards the master tugging practitioners. And NGO should involve in forming good connections between related government bodies and concerned communities among tugging communities themselves. So we think that in Vietnam we have just set up network for the Tugging communities. And in a broader scale, I think that we may want to set up an international Tugging network association to create for Tugging communities of all the former member states the opportunities for connection and awareness raising, experience sharing, and performance exchanging and capacity building. And we may want to collaborate in updating our inventory nomination file with the additional information of the newly discovering Tugging communities as required in the convention. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Sophearith, please.
Yes, I totally agree with Professor Ho that like we should expand the collaboration from others. Like sometimes it's not ethnic minorities; they also have tagging rituals. Like involving them in the ways that like expand as wider as possible. Speaking about that, I think to make it sustain in the long term. Is to have the exchange programs. I think, for example, the exchange program that we conducted with Korea, with the Philippines and Vietnam, and I hope in the future will be in Cambodia. And I think those are rotating it. It make known, like we can make a like take turns each year, like one country taking responsible for that. In order to do that, speaking of that, it needs to be put into calendars, like for each government to make the preparation for, that this is the time that they can take turn. With that platform, we can invite other communities that have the tagging ritual beyond our 4 countries, to take part in this. And I think that is one of the point I would like to make here. Maybe we can make an MOU between the 4 countries, like annual hosting of the events, like tagging ritual events every year, like it takes turns in this country. This is just one of my suggestions. Research, I think expand research and documentation, I think it is very useful too, because research and documentation, you can understand much more deeper the similarity, diversity within Cambodia themselves. I just explained to you, I learned a lot more recently about the tagging ritual, the variety, the differences in the practice, even though they're similar in the meaning, but significance, but there are nuances and there are, like ways that we can learn a lot from how that intangible cultural heritage develop within Cambodia, within each community. And what about, like in comparing to other countries, I think open it up, it will be more wider, we can gain more knowledge about intangible cultural heritage. Maybe we can develop out certain means for safeguarding not only tagging rituals and games, but other elements as well. Another point I would like to make here is to have a publications. I know that Korean have done tremendous work in publishing documents in both Korean and in English. And I think that I know that is the problems and speaking in the case of Cambodia, we don't have much documentations on in Khmer language, in our local language. Professor Ho just mentioned about the encyclopedia produced about the tagging rituals and game. And I think that it would be helpful if, like we pull resources together and then bring it about and put it, like maybe, in some way that Korea or Philippines or Vietnam can assist Cambodia, or Cambodia can assist in a way. And I think that is the collaborative work or the assistance is needed so that it expands the knowledge of the local communities in Cambodia, in Korea, and in Philippines, in other countries as well. And I think building such having such a publication will contribute to more, to raise more awareness and also understanding and love for the tagging rituals game. And of course, I think it will inspire for more safeguarding measures for other element, ICH element as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, may I ask Dr. Talavera, please?
Thank you. What our colleagues have mentioned were great recommendations, and each CAP has always been very active in its safeguarding efforts and did very visible promotions about the tagging games and rituals. So to add from the Philippines, with the consent of the communities. Activities on information sharing may be done, such as publications of books, brochures, learning materials. And this year, the NCCA will partner with an organization in Ifugao for the development and publication of learning guides for Punuk. This will aid the cultural masters and bearers in the transmission and documentation of their ICH. We can also do seminars, roundtable discussions, and updating of information as well. Or the web-based information exchange platform may also be done. For the awareness raising, if the communities would allow and give permission to undertake, a timely project would be that would allow the youth to be engaged, maybe interactive mobile applications or games on tagging communities. Because seeing the number of views of One Asia with rope in YouTube and Facebook, we could say that it indeed reached a lot of audience, both nationally and internationally. It helped in the promotion of the inscribed ICH, and locally it may intensify the efforts of the local government and us to constantly conduct projects to safeguard Punuk. So internationally, it may have gained more recognition from other countries too, and these events, such as this, has exposed the ICH to various opportunities from potential stakeholders as well. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I think this was really helpful for all of us to have this discussion. We not only talked about 줄다리기, the tugging rituals and games, but also we talked about the safeguarding in general and sustainable development in general, and what collaborative nomination among these multinational entities can do together. And in fact, I would like to synthesize the information that we shared, our thoughts together, and report it at UNESCO, because UNESCO is starting the 3-year project on, now it's going to be 2 years, project on the listing mechanism. And I think we have some valuable suggestions that we can make together. For example, for multinational nominations, maybe we can ask them to include a section where we should discuss how this kind of process proceeded, you know, what the communities did in this process. And there is no such section in the current form. So multinational nomination and single nation nomination do not have any difference for the moment, but maybe we can suggest that there should be something more for multinational nomination. That might be our contribution. So thank you all. I see that our time's up, and I really thank you for spending your precious Saturday afternoon to discuss this. But I'm glad that we really talked about the substance here, and we learned from each other again. So thank you, and I hope that we can see each other in person in not too far in the future. For the time being, I wish you health and I wish you happiness. Thank you. Goodbye. And I'll hand over the microphone to the Secretariat. Goodbye.
Thank you, Professor, and all the panelists. From yesterday, we talked about the future, the past, the present, and the future of the tugging rituals and games in the sense of the collaboration. And also, we every presentation and panelist touched upon the meaning of living with ICH, which is a not specifically recognized, but the element which was in there actually in our Next to Us. So as a person in charge of this project, I learned a lot also. Now we will close the 2021 International Symposium on Tugging Rituals and Games for its sustainability, Living with ICH. The live-streamed file will be uploaded at the HCAP's YouTube channel, particularly the rituals, which was live-streamed on 8 April, the day before yesterday, will be also uploaded after the English subtitle work. So please check the EachCap's webpage frequently. So once again, thank you very much for every presenters, participants, panelists, including the online, for giving the time for a precious Saturday afternoon also. So I really hope to see you all again soon, and have a good weekend. Bye.